Welcome to the OtherWorldsGG Community Cast. This is episode number 3. I am Tale for Two, aka Hunter, and I'm joined by my two partners in crime, Alien Pickle and Mellified. How you guys doing?
I am doing well. I think Alien Pickle's actually awake now, so we should have a good show.
Yeah, I've switched off my targeting computer. I'm using the Force at this point.
You use the
caffeine.
You use the Force, Pickle.
Space Wizards.
Space Wizards. I love the premise of that. Someone was like, they gave the equation of like, have you ever thought about it? It's just like, you know, a wizard and a bard walk into a bar and meet up with a rogue and like a brawler or whatever. It's just like, oh, interesting. to go save a princess from an evil dark wizard.
Right.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a series of Star Wars books where the subtitles were, instead of like A New Hope, it was a farm boy and a space wizard or something? I swear that's an actual thing.
It's been out there. It's been out there for a little while. There's been a few of those different ones. There's also like the Star Wars, but in Shakespeare, which I was like, who in their mind would want to read that?
The thing that has the best odds of being a farm boy and a space wizard walk into a bar would be watching the Chinese version of A New Hope and reading the subtitle. Because Backstroke of the West is an amazing thing.
Wow, man, it's been an interesting couple of weeks since our last show. There's been a lot of just going on out in the gaming world, huh?
Yeah, no shortage of exciting events, that's for sure.
Well,
Sony delisted our podcast from their store.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's a good one to come out of the gates. So, like, CD Projekt Red released their game Cyberpunk 2077 to a very mixed like
Hunter
crowd. Yeah, what's up?
Hunter, you're legally required to refer to it as the highly anticipated Cyberpunk 2077.
Sorry, we'll retract that. The highly anticipated, been waiting for a decade for this Cyberpunk 2077.
Did you put that as actually the game name? Like whenever you register your game on Steam, you could just be like the highly anticipated Cat Ranch Simulator.
Origins
is actually the title of the game. Yeah, Origin.
You could.
Somebody did put a cat ranching simulator, and it's you're trying to like restore a feline cafe. It's like, you know, those cat cafes they have in Japan. So you have to go out and Pokemon around the world and catch cats and then put them in your cafe.
So weird. All right, so Table for Two, the highly anticipated Cyberpunk 2077.
Right. So that got released to a very mixed like people, you know, getting their hands on this game. I'm trying to think of the word here, but anyway, so it came out. It's people can buy it and play it on all kinds of platforms, except you can no longer buy it on Sony's platform. The interesting thing is during this week, we're recording on a Saturday here, and so this whole, you know, the 19th of December, so like this whole like preceding week, there was just a slew of like Cyberpunk bleh. And part of that was Sony came out and said that they're offering full refunds to anybody who wants it, and then they're also delisting the game off of their store, which
is amazing. Okay, I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'll just let Mellified drop that line that he did last night because that needs to be heard again.
Well, this buries the lead that now Microsoft has a console exclusive for the Xbox Series because Cyberpunk's excuse me while I choke to death. Cyberpunk's no longer on PlayStation, so console exclusive. Microsoft, bam, done.
Woo! I wonder when it's coming to games for Windows Live.
Microsoft did follow suit. Microsoft did follow suit, by the way, and offer extended refund window. They basically just said we're gonna, allow refunds, and they didn't set an expiration. They did keep it listed in the store though. So
right. So that's interesting because so there's been many discussions on many forums on many places around the internet around all this stuff, and you've got some justifiably upset. You've also got your entitled salt gamer like attitude out there, which is kind of just, you know, salty is going to be salty, right? So people just like to be mad about anything and everything. But the interesting thing about all of this is you know, I think people need to lean in more towards listening to what the company is saying, not just like the PR company, but like the people who actually work there, the developers, the producers, and all that other stuff behind the scenes. Like, take a step back and don't just right. Well,
see where the management is because the developers put them there.
Right. There's that. So I think people want to jump to the gun and be like, refund, worst game ever, blah blah blah. And I understand that, you know, people have every right to spend their money as they see fit. I think the greater story here is how, you know, you look at, I think it's a wider problem in the industry from a AAA perspective when you get board members involved, when you get financial investors involved who are just looking at a bottom line rather than the individuals trying to get you to that bottom line or the customers that are going to receive the product that it's going to present that bottom line to you. So I think that's a very important you know, thing to take into consideration. So Sony not just offering refunds but delisting, I thought was interesting because it flat out removes any possibility of someone having choice, right? You know, and someone having the opportunity. If you're going to be offering refunds, why not give people the opportunity to at least buy it and try it and see if they can make it work on their machine? That's the thing that kind of kills me.
No, there's reasons, right? So
okay, go ahead.
Sony, yeah. Let's say Sony takes 30% like Valve does. Whenever you refund a game, they don't give the 30% back. So if I buy a game for, let's make it an even $100, I spend $100, I refund it. They give the developer back 70, or they give the customer back 100, but the developer still has to pay $30 to the store. And there was no copy that ever changed hands at that point. So every refund costs the developer. So if it's a $50 game, it costs the developer $15 every time somebody refunds it.
Interesting. So okay, now that
would be like, this is good. Store.
This is good that you guys are doing that because now it helps my puny brain understand that process, because a lot of this stuff I'm just ignorant to. So that's why I'm like, you know, it doesn't make sense to me. But now it does. But it also says to me more about what Microsoft is doing, that Microsoft can handle that. And I think that's another just interesting twist in the whole bag. But CD Projekt Red is putting out patches, and they just dropped another patch recently, and I got to check it out and see how well it's doing to fix some of the bugs. Now, PC players got the better end of the deal on this, right? So like the PC wasn't as bad. Now, the only bugs that I ran into 2 bugs that because I bought the game. The first bug I ran into was I did run into a T-model person at one of the nightclubs very early on. So like you walk in and it's just standard T-model, like person just standing there with their hands, you know, out from their sides, just standing there. The other one I did was it was actually a game stopping bug in which I couldn't progress further because something glitched and the character of Jackie was no longer available to go talk to. And so because he just disappeared, so he wasn't there. So I had to reboot, and actually Pickle was watching me. I was sharing my game with him so he could see it, and he actually watched it happen. And so I had to revert to a previous save state and then try it again, and it worked. After that,
which luckily it auto saves about every 30 seconds or something. So
right,
it auto saves aggressively.
Right, and the nice thing about that though is like after that I have yet to run into any other bugs or like glitches or issues of any kind
on
PC, right, on PC. So
well, I think the high sodium content is that when people are trying to run this on consoles that it never should have been released for.
Because
they were like top end spec when GTA 5 was a top end game. So now this game does not look like GTA 5. Had they released the game in 2014 or whatever, it would look like GTA 5 and it would run fine. But we are now in the era where you can't have a game look like 2 generations ago and also support RTX and all the whiz bang stuff, right? So it's just not possible unless you
I don't know that it isn't possible. I think it's possible. It just requires a hell of a lot of work. And it's kind of like essentially making 2 versions of the game.
Right. It's like in the old days when it's like, oh, you could get this game on like Xbox, or you can buy the Nintendo DS version of Call of Duty, which is not at all the same game.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But it's like the name is the same, but that's it. Right. So basically, yeah. I mean, they would have to like redo a whole new set of assets and a whole new renderer and all that to make it, they could keep the logic behind it, I guess, like the quests and whatever, but like the whole visual presentation will have to be something else, because if you try to play it on those last gen consoles, then it drops all the settings down to lowest, right? And then it's still, it's interesting actually how they spawn things into the world, because they kind of like, like in Tron when things derez, right? They like disappear into a bunch of pixels. Well, here they like res in like that, so you see like a cloud of pixels turn into a person or a table or whatever. It's interesting how they chose to do that. But I will have that happen occasionally where it's like the game only is rendering the stuff that's in your field of view, and it'll render like just in time. It'll start drawing the thing that's about to come on the screen. But if you turn really quick, then it can't do it fast enough, and you actually see people pop in on the sidewalk, like right in front of you. But it happens really fast, right? But there's like a couple of frames where there's nobody there, and then boop. So it's like on the PlayStation 4, like non-pro or whatever, it can actually take like 10 seconds for faces to appear on people when you walk past them in the street. Like they just walk by with like a smear for a face, and then it'll pop on. So it's like, yeah, that's bad, right? And they're trying to scale it down with option stuff, to like let's turn the graphics to the lowest thing. But the way that it renders things, that is not a good solution, because just watch a YouTube video of what it looks like. It's bad.
So what I would say is it's lowering the graphic settings to lowest or low solves one set of problems, which is things like, the level of detail, the draw distance, things like that, which helps the GPU side. But what it sounds like to me is what you're describing sounds like problems with either the CPU or the ability to keep enough of the assets in memory for the console to be able to render everything, in time.
Right.
But I think, CDPR is probably not the first game developer to have problems like this, because on paper, sure, it should be able to run on all this different hardware, but you have to go in and hand optimize it for the different things and write special case code and things like that to get it running really smooth. And they just ran out of time to do that. But 2 points I want to make. One, hey, keep in mind, CD Projekt Red delayed this game over a month to fix the first gen or last gen consoles, right? That's what they said was, it's not optimized. We need more time to optimize it. So how bad was it a month ago? Like, if this is what they shipped.
Yeah. Well, how bad was it last January whenever CD Projekt's execs said the game's done, we're just polishing? That was in January of 2020.
Yeah.
So a year ago, what kind of state was this thing in? So they've been bullshitting all along. And you would think like CD Projekt Red has been that's like the studio that doesn't do the bad things that all other studios do. And now they have like surpassed EA levels of bullshit in one shot. Like, so I feel like in order to regain the trust of everybody, they have to lose their senior management as a unit. Just fire the entire top 10% of the company, and then maybe we can talk again. But this should not have happened. If they'd have been in the last minute, like, you know what, we can release the PC version, we can release the next gen console versions, but we cannot release the stuff because, trust us, you don't want this yet, but we will get it there. But it will take an additional 6 months, right? So we're targeting like April or something. Then the previous gen consoles will get it. But if you want to play it right now, go get that PS5, from the scalper guy that's selling them for $1,000. But it's like if you have a next gen console, great, play it. The other thing about delisting it off the store, I don't know what Sony's like as far as pushing patches, but I know like with Microsoft, you have to go through the certification process. They charge you for that. And therefore, every time you push a patch, it takes weeks, and it also costs you a lot of money. And so if they were going to push incremental patches, like, oh yeah, we're going to patch once a week. It's like, hey man, we're costing ourselves like $100,000 every week doing this. So no, it's just like, you know what, we're going to fix it on PC. And then when we're done with the PC version, the console version comes out. And
that would have been smart. I agree with you there. I think they should have just punted on the console version.
Yeah, and not only that, but for the reviewers, they only gave out PC code. You could not get the console version. So the people that wrote the reviews for the console versions wrote it based on playing a PC copy. Right. Because, reviews have to come out. You have to be like 80 hours into the game and write a review before the thing comes out, right? So if all those reviews that came out tells me these people only played it on PC.
Well, so there are a couple points I wanted to make about this. One is just I happen to know this, at least the fees for testing a patch for both Microsoft and Sony are between $5,000 and $10,000, and that is pass or fail. So you submit the updated version of the game, they run it through the checklist, and if you fail, you get a reason why, and they go through and finish the testing as much as they can and tell you all the things that failed, but you're still out the money that you paid to have it tested. So it's very common to pay somebody else to test it before you submit it so that you don't fail the test, right?
But $10,000 is $5,000 to $10,000 is a lot better than what I was thinking it was going to be. So, yeah.
Well, and there's obviously deals that they cut. Like if you do DLC, you get the patch that is tied to the paid DLC for free. So that's why you see a proliferation of paid DLC a lot of times, or the patch gets delayed until the DLC is about to come out because they get that one for free.
So that's why Bethesda came up with horse armor, because they needed to put a patch out.
Well, that was the first DLC, so I don't think anybody knew what they were doing. But so that just some behind the scenes stuff there for how that works. Certainly, with a game that's selling as much as CD Projekt Red's expecting to sell or seems to be selling, then I suspect that all comes out in the wash. What I don't know is if they have to submit, if those prices have gone up now that there are more consoles to test against. Like, do you have to pass on PS4, PS4 Pro, and PS5? Kind of thing. So there may be some nuance there that I'm not aware of because I haven't been involved in that side of it in a while. But one of the things that's really interesting, I think the reason Sony delisted the game versus Microsoft just offering extended refunds was going back to No Man's Sky, which was supposed to be, Sony hyped the hell out of that game before it came out and really was holding it up as this example of what, next generation at the time consoles could do. And it came out and it was such a disappointment to people. Sony basically, had to offer refunds because people were so upset about it. And really, I think Sony delisting it is delisting Cyberpunk in part is to avoid, having a million pissed off PS4 players. I also think, the PS4 is a pretty decent console for the last gen. It's not the original Xbox was a piece of crap, but the original PS4 is pretty good. And so the fact that it performs the game Cyberpunk performs so poorly really tells you, they shouldn't have been targeting these older consoles, because the launch Xbox One has got to be just god awful to play on.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've seen occasionally I'll bump into somebody who still has a launch Xbox One. I'm just like, man, I don't know how you get by on that. Considering the current market of gaming, to me that's to me the launch Xbox One is 2 generations ago on gaming and gaming, and so I still have the Xbox One X. And this is actually a good segue into the fact that I've been trying to get my hands on an Xbox Series X, and them and PS5s have just been sold out everywhere constantly. You'll get a drop on Walmart and they're gone in seconds. You'll get a drop on Best Buy's website, they're gone again in seconds. I think one of the things that happened with GameStop is GameStop did a thing to where you actually had to come into the store to actually purchase it, so that's how they were trying to get around the bot scalpers. At one point there was a recent thing about that, but there's just the demand here is shockingly high when you take into consideration projects like Stadia and Amazon, what they're trying to do with Luna, that while these technologies are interesting and unique and cool, it really shows the desire for people to still have that box in the living room that they play video games on with their kids, or their kids play on, or whatever it is. So it's just to me that's what that shows. And the fact that the Switch, especially during the pandemic, has been selling like hotcakes. My brother was having a hard time trying to find one a few weeks ago, just to get for his kid as an example. But they finally have some more back in stock because everybody's trying to buy the new stuff and not get a Switch. But
I still don't understand the Switch. It's the handheld thing.
Well,
I don't know.
So
it's if I could sit there, I guess because I own the TV and I don't have to be told hey, go to your room, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's a great observation, and I think we touched on this at least once on a previous episode, but to me the Switch is one of those things that I would never really take it anywhere unless maybe I was traveling, but even then I don't think I would ever undock the thing to play something, just because I don't have a need to in my environment. Why play it on that little screen in front of me when I could play it on the nice 4K TV, that's big 50-inch 4K TV that's 10 feet away from me. So it's not the console's fault. It's just the functionality of being portable is not a feature that I'm looking for. So
yeah, I've had a Switch since launch, and I was traveling 2 weeks a month previously last year, pre-COVID. And
did you jailbreak it?
No, I never jailbroke it, because even with the hardware issue that there is now, it's a tethered jailbreak. So if the system battery runs out, you have to re-jailbreak it.
Ooh.
You have to basically interrupt the boot process to do the jailbreak.
But that is interesting though, because you can restore it back to non-jailbroken by just rebooting it, right?
Yep.
So it's like, okay, that's fine, I guess. It's inconvenient, like if you're on a bus trip somewhere.
Well, that was my worry, and you know, I don't mind buying the games. Generally, I was game sharing with my kids because we ended up with the second Switch that the kids would use, and that meant that if I'm logged into my Switch, I have to be online in order to play my games if I'm not doing cartridges, if I'm doing digital stuff, which got a little inconvenient when I was on a freaking airplane, for example. And so I tended not to play the Switch as much as I thought I would. You know, I had it in the hotel, but I also ended up just bringing an Xbox One X with me in a travel case.
Does it DRM? Like you have to be able to touch their cloud server in order to launch games that you downloaded to it?
It's like the consoles. It's like the other consoles in that on the primary device for your account, everything you purchase digitally is unlocked. And then anytime you're logged in on a Switch, any other Switch, anything you own is unlocked as long as you have an internet connection to validate the license.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So my issue was my kids were playing the one that was always unlocked because when they signed in with their account, even though I purchased it, they could play it. Which meant the one I had with me, I had to be signed in online.
Okay, but that means like, do they do it based on per game, or is it the account? Like if you're logged in as me on your Switch, I can't play my Switch because...
Correct. Right? You can only be signed in one at a time.
Okay, but what if I'm offline? Like I sign in on mine and then I take it offline, and then you sign in as me on yours.
Well, it does a online. So if you are like in my situation, if I was on the airplane and I had internet because I flew so much, I had internet on all of the flights I was on. I would connect. And if the airplane dropped internet midway through the flight, I would eventually, within about 10 minutes, get a message on my Switch saying, sorry, we couldn't check in. Your game's been paused.
Oh, that's bullshit. See, it's like, I like the way that Steam does the offline thing. It's just like, hey, we need to verify, right? And then you go offline and you're good until you come back online.
I think you have 30 days with that, by the way.
But that's... Yeah, if the plane trip takes 30 days, then
yes. Well, so here's the thing, though.
Just sit right Xbox, back and you'll hear it. Sorry. Okay.
So on Xbox and PlayStation, if you are signed into a secondary device, a secondary console, you can play all of your games, and your kid, like in my case, can be playing all of the games that you've purchased on their Xbox or PlayStation. And you can play multiplayer games together, right? Because you've got essentially, you know, a coexisting license, which is a big deal when you start talking about a family of 5 who all play games and want to play the same games. Because now I only have to buy, well, let's say family of 4, I only have to buy 2 copies of every game I want to play. Whereas with Steam, if you want to play online, you can't share. You can't, if you want to play multiplayer together, you can't share the license. Because as soon as I sign in, if you're sharing my account, you get a message that, hey, you're getting kicked off because Mellify just signed in.
Right. So I can't share out a game to you out of my account. I have to put you on the family thing, and then when you log in, I'm done. I'm just out of Steam entirely. So it's not like you can play a game that I'm not playing.
You are sharing the account effectively on Steam, whereas on Xbox you're sharing the games.
Okay.
Which it means that on Steam, if I have 4 people and we all want to have the same game and play multiplayer together, I have to buy 4 copies. On Xbox and PlayStation, if I want to play multiplayer together, I only have to buy 2 copies.
So other question, right, is because you can have multiple profiles on a console.
Yep.
So how did they work it? Like one profile bought the game, and then somebody logs in with the other profile, and you still play
As long as you're on the home system. Like if I buy all the games and my home system is designated as the one in my family room, then whoever logs into that home system shares my game licenses and they share my subscriptions. So
so
Xbox Live Gold,
that prevents me from going to your house, logging in, downloading stuff, leaving, and then you can still play it because
correct.
It's on your machine. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So they've done a good job, right? I think they've thought this through. PlayStation screwed up initially with the PS3, and they gave you, instead of one home console, they gave you 5, and people shared, all the games with all their friends, and it was a big giant mess. And they ended up limiting it at some point for future games to where you could only have it on, one machine unlocked, and then you had to be signed in. But what's interesting about Switch, and this is what I was trying to get to by delving into all this crap, is that as far as I have been able to test, Nintendo does not allow you to play a single digital license of a multiplayer game twice. So if my kid is playing Smash Brothers and I sign in for my Switch and we want to play together, we're playing the same copy, right? Because they're playing the copy that I purchased. It will actually collide and say, nope, sorry, you don't have 2 licenses. Where on Xbox and PlayStation, that's not true. I can play one copy twice online together. But not with Nintendo, which is weird that they made that exception. It kind of makes sense, I suppose, but it does mean that, it's a little more expensive on the Switch to buy multiplayer stuff. So,
yeah. But it would be interesting on the Switch, though. Like, if I own the game and I want to play at the same time as you, and you also own a Switch, and we're in the same room together, like, then the Switches, like, could it network together, and then I just pull the game across the network onto mine and start it up, and then we could play together.
There are some games on the DS that did that. It was called Local Play or Share Play or something like that, where you basically copy a subset of the game wirelessly over local Wi-Fi link to your friend's device, and then you guys could play together. But it was like game specific. It wasn't every game didn't have to have that feature.
That slightly reminds me too of what was it, the Zelda 4 Swords on GameCube, where if you had a bunch of Game Boys, you could hook them on to the GameCube, and like each person could have their own little like screen on the controller, of the Game Boy. And like you're all playing together on the big screen, but like if someone was to go into like a cave, it would like show up on their controller. Just like little weird innovations that Nintendo's done over the years that I've always found interesting. I would love to see more of a return to form where if you're on the same LAN together and it's just like you all have a Switch, only one person needs Mario Kart, and then like you all can play Mario Kart together if you're in the same room or something like that.
Right. If their goal was to sell Switches and not cartridges, then
because
sell me 4 of them.
But like that would also encourage people to get the game too if they didn't have it already, because maybe like if you had the full game, it unlocks certain stuff or certain things like that. So like there could be incentive.
Do you remember how Blizzard did with StarCraft, where
the spawn a copy? You take your disc to your friend's house and spawn a copy. And as long as you were online, they could play with you. Yeah, I always thought that was a brilliant, like, way of doing that. Like, because that encouraged you. Well, the cool thing about that too, though, is that was awesome if you had multiple computers at home. You buy one copy of the, because like we did, for example, like I had a computer and my dad had a computer, and so like I installed it on my machine. I'd spawn a copy on my dad's computer, and so like when my friend would come over for like the weekend or whatever, we would be able to play together, like so. I think that kind of stuff is actually pretty cool. Of course, StarCraft and StarCraft 2 are free these days, but I think the point still stands.
I do not miss. I could never go back to having to get up off the couch, walk across the room to change which DVD is in my Xbox.
Yeah.
because it cares, right? Like I validate that you own the game because the physical media is in the drive, and if it's not, even if it's installed on the hard drive, you can't play it. And
Well,
it's
wasn't
like,
that the beautiful thing about like the PC though? Not to like,
yeah,
whatever, but
well,
like
the
you could get the
PC used to do
no
that
CD
too.
patch it. Well, no, you could get the no CD
Right.
hacks, right? So we're just like you don't
Yep.
need the the disc and the drive. You could actually have a no CD hack, and you could keep playing the game without having to swapping discs all the time. Now, some games you
Yeah,
had
so
to
let's-
swap discs because they had like media files, like movies or audio that you needed, but
So we should pour one out on the grave of the no CD crack empire.
it did.
Unfortunately, they're like the horseshoe manufacturers when cars came out. It's just kind of like, well, you're still relevant, sort of.
Well, I mean, in older games though, like if you want to try and play an older game still, that's like you can't, because like man, I tell you what, I still have a few games that I own physical discs for because there is no digital distribution of it. One of the ones that I think about is what was it, Rise of Empires or
Rise of Nations.
I think so, but there's Rise of Nations, but then they had like a sequel like
Age of
Rise of
Empires.
Legends.
Oh yes.
And Rise of Legends you can't get anywhere. It just like it doesn't exist. You can get Rise of Nations all over the place. Like it's I think you can even get it on Game Pass actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
There's like but like if you were to try and find Rise of Legends, like there is no digital distribution of it. Like it's not on GOG, it's nowhere. And I have that still on disc in my my DVD binder that I keep on the shelf. But
and that's all just legal stuff, right? Like it's not because the game files don't exist somewhere. It's just because there's a legal issue with the rights.
Right.
Yeah, so that's also like Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 2.
Right.
Which is one of the best damn RTS games that ever got made. And you can't touch it anywhere because it's like Tolkien family licensing thing, and we can only sell this game for X number of months, and then we're done. And God, I hate that. So that's like the Transformers games getting yanked off of Steam with no warning. It was just like, boom, all the Transformers games are gone one day, and it's like, what happened? It's like, well, I hope you owned them if you wanted them.
Yeah, well, the licenses expire. Absolutely. There's a great site called Delisted Games that tries to track all this, right? And when they know a license is going to expire, they post a notification and stuff. But this is a huge issue, to our mission at OtherWorldsGG about game preservation. Like having these rights disappear, those are never coming back because it's not worth it to EA. For your example, Alien Pickle of the Tolkien game, it's not worth the money it would cost them to get a new license to continue to distribute that game because they're not going to sell enough copies of an old title to justify, probably even the lawyer's time to write the contract up. So it's just never going to happen. And that game's gone for forever, effectively, unless you go buy it used. And, one of the unfortunate things with that, Microsoft has said with their backward compatibility, for example, the technology is solved, right? They have the ability to run every single Xbox game on the Xbox One, on the Xbox Series, full stop, period. The reason they don't have more games in backward compatibility, and they have a lot, to be fair, but the reason they don't have all of them is because of licensing. And they said it basically just comes down to the lawyers getting involved and actually getting the rights. And there are about 24 games, I think, last time I looked, on the backward compatibility list that are not available digitally. But if you have the disc, you can physically insert the disc into your Xbox One or Xbox Series. It will download a patch, install the game from the disc, download a patch, and then you can play it as long as you have the disc and the drive going, back to our no CD crack days. As long as you have that disc and the drive, you can play that game, but you can't buy it digitally because of the rights involved. So,
but at least it doesn't prevent them from developing the backward compatibility for the game. They just can't distribute the game.
Right.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes. So that they're not
But
allowed to do a digital version, essentially.
Okay, but are there games that are not backward compatible just because why bother? Because we can't sell it. So why put the dev time into making it?
Almost certainly. But like, Microsoft's obviously going to prioritize testing the ones that they know they have the rights to, right? Why go back and test something that you can't?
The one that I got burnt on, my favorite console game of all time was SSX Tricky 2 or SSX Tricky, which was the second SSX game, right? And then SSX 3 is backward compatible. I can play that on the 360. Yep. But SSX Tricky never got the backward compatibility treatment, at least when I had my 360 plugged in. And I was most disappointed because I actually bought a copy of it again because I gave my original Xbox to my wife's nephews. It was like, Merry Christmas. Here's last gen console and like 150 games. Right. And they were happy. But it's the thing of like, okay, I gave away all those games because backward compatibility wasn't a thing. Now it's a thing. And I kind of want to claw some of those games back, kids. But it's like, okay, well, I'll go on eBay and I'll buy a copy of Tricky and I get it and I put it in the 360 and I'm like, yeah, this is gonna, oh wait, there is no patch for this.
Yeah.
What?
And it's strictly licensing, right? In that case, that the reason that game is not available is because somebody holds the license and it's not worth the money, to make it happen. GOG got their start, right, doing this for PC, because as much as we like to think of the PC as being, my PC can play all games from all time, it's not true.
So Microsoft, there's one thing Microsoft could do that would just be the most amazing thing. I don't own an Xbox, but I am willing to buy the games from the last gen, right? And they're all backward compatible on the Xbox One Series X, which happens to be running Windows 10, same OS that my PC is running. So if you want to put those in the store as a digital download and it just runs the same emulator that the Xbox, One X does, that makes it play on my PC, I will give you $30 today so I can play Crimson Skies. I will give you
I was about to say it's probably going to, Well, did you see there's
$20 today for Mech Warrior 2 or Mech Assault 2, right?
Have you seen there's this YouTuber, Modern Vintage Gamer. He's got a great YouTube channel. If you haven't, go check him out if you're into retro games. He did a thing recently where he was showing that System Link still works across like 4 or 5 generations of Xbox, and he used Crimson Skies as the example for this.
Oh, he actually, I saw the video existed. I didn't go into.
Yeah, so he essentially he took an OG original Xbox, he took an Xbox 360, he took an Xbox One, and then he took an Xbox Series X, and he like loaded up Crimson Skies on all of them, and the System Link feature in that works. And so like you could play on an Xbox Series X with someone who's playing on an original Xbox on a System Link game like configuration. My mind was blown. I was like that. Yeah. The fact that Microsoft still somehow made all of that work on the back, because on the Xbox 360 and I think on the Xbox Series and the Xbox One, it's all digital versions that he was running. And so that means that they're still emulating the System Link thing in the back end. So it's like,
but then they have to emulate the entire Xbox Live ecosystem as well. So
hold on.
Well, Malified.
You guys are conflating two different things. So System Link is literally just LAN play. So all System Link did was the same thing PCs have been doing for years: send a broadcast packet out on the Ethernet card, and said, "Hey, let's play together."
Yes, but when you think in terms of the fact that it's the digital version, so that's a if I'm not mistaken, there is some emulation going on though to make the older game run on the newer system. Am I correct?
Sure. So all they did was create a virtual NIC in that emulator that then ties to the physical NIC in the hardware.
Yeah,
correct. And so hold on. I want to keep going down this rabbit hole for just a second. So one of the things that we noticed the other day, Mellified, when we were trying to play the Xbox arcade version of like Perfect Dark or whatever, when they did the HD release, you and I had to actually friend request each other on the 360 version of Microsoft stuff, because even though we were already friends in the Microsoft ecosystem, we actually weren't friends in the 360 ecosystem. So I'm just saying, like, there's some interesting network stuff there that they have to continue to support somehow.
So the difference in what you're talking about is that Crimson Skies is an Xbox original release, and the multiplayer stuff on that was all proprietary, custom per game. It wasn't until the 360 we had a cohesive, standardized backend for multiplayer gaming, which was Xbox Live 2.0, if you will. Because it was called Xbox Live on the original, but it was per game that they set up servers and did everything. And you didn't have this concept of a unified login like you did with the 360. So what we were running into is the 360 had a limit on the number of friends you could have. So when they wanted to give you more than 100 friends, it was going to break the 360 to do that because it didn't have enough memory. So they split the friends list, and you have a 360 friends list, and you have a go forward friends list that's 2,000 or something silly. So point being, what we were running into was, hey, we're running on the 360 backend because this is a 360 game. With Crimson Skies, we're running an original Xbox title which has no multiplayer anymore on online, because they shut down all those servers because they didn't want to maintain custom code for each game. At least with the 360, they just have one code base to deal with. So
yeah,
I just think that's amazing though with those old games. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, do you remember whenever it was OG Xbox, and somebody came up with some kind of a network proxy thing so that you could get Xbox System Link shit to play across a VPN between.
Yes.
So I would run it on my PC, you run it on your PC, and then we could both play Halo together.
Yeah, I forget what the name of that mod is. God, it's on the tip of my tongue.
It would scare me if you remembered it, because it's only been 20 years.
Well, like I said, there's actually a mod out there now. The name of the software is Xlink Kai, KAI. If you go to teamxlink.co.uk, that's where the software is at, and they do. They have like support for like OG Halo 2, Warhawk, Gran Turismo 5, Midtown Madness 3, Mario Kart Double Dash, for example. So they're doing some like old school PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and GameCube support. This is like local play, but like LAN play, but over the internet, which is pretty cool. So they've got this piece of software, and there's a full set of instructions on how to do it, and they have like their own kind of little ecosystem. There's no modifications you have to do to any of your hardware for any of this stuff. It just all is handled outside of having to do anything, so you don't have to like screw with your hardware, which is kind of nice. But it's something that I've honestly been looking into doing for my own, because I have an OG Xbox, and I've been wanting to like hook it up and try and see if I can't get online with some of these people and play.
Did you cut the capacitor on yours yet?
No, why?
There's you should look it up. There's a capacitor that very commonly leaks and ruins the board.
Interesting.
And basically it's for the clock chip or something. So if you just cut it off, it's fine. But if you don't do that, the acid will eat through the board and ruin it.
I will have to look that up. You can probably send that to me offline, and I'll take a look.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason I don't have an OG Xbox anymore. Unfortunately, is I did not do that, and I learned the hard way what was going on when I was troubleshooting it, and I haven't gotten around to finding a new one to purchase, because I have the original Steel Battalion games and the controller, and I would desperately love to set that up.
Never get rid of those, Mellified. Whatever you do.
I won't. No. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I would love to get an original Xbox so I could set that up again and then run something like this, and I could actually play, online again. With
Jim, have you ever played Steel Battalion on Steel Battalion controllers?
No, I've watched a lot of video of people playing it, but I've never actually played it. And
I had a friend in high school who was a spoiled brat, and his parents got him everything, and he had one of these things. And I got to try it out. It's pretty incredible. It's a pretty like intense controller.
Yeah, I put you through like the whole startup sequence for the Mac and everything. So
yeah, I mean pedals. Yeah. So like pedals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that a console got this and not the PC is just mind-boggling to me. But yeah,
wasn't it like $400 for the game and the controller was?
I want to say it was maybe it was $400. Yeah, it might have been.
It was not. It was not a casual thing. And
no.
I'm just like, okay, it's like, yeah, I know that game is going to be pretty lit, but I don't think I'm going to play $400 worth of it. Had it been like an online multiplayer thing, like like you're going to play this every day with a bunch of other people and whatever, then maybe I'd have thrown down for it. But
so I'm looking on Amazon right now. There is a copy on Amazon, obviously used, but it is $590.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I know that there were 2 games that came out that used the controller, the original, and then they did a sequel, and they did a second run of the controller when they did the sequel. And I have the second run, which has blue buttons rather than the original had green. But it is a beautiful piece of hardware. And one of the cool things is a lot of people don't realize this, because when you look at the screenshots, it looks really clunky and like DOS era interface. That was intentional. As you progress through the game and get better mechs, the UI in the mechs got better, because the idea was that was like the progression of the technology. And
the early mechs, it's like you're looking through a postal, like a mail slot, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like you have this little view, and it's surrounded by like steam gauge looking shit. And then by the time you get to the end, are you in like a glass cockpit with like a big view screen? And see that's cool. The other thing that I thought was really neat about that game is you had an eject button, and you had to use it, because if you died, then you're back to mission 1 again. It was
they delete your save
game.
Yeah. Well, and one of the cool things was there is actually a cheat code for the second game that lets you play with the end game mechs. It unlocks all the mechs for you, so you can try them all out. And so that was super cool to be able to try some of the end game mechs.
Yeah. Can we talk about the tragedy? Can we talk about the tragedy of Steel Battalion 2 and the
Kinect version?
Yeah, the Kinect thing. Like, if they'd have given you an option to be able to play that game without the Kinect, I'd have bought it. But I tried the demo thing that they put out, and it was just like, this doesn't work at all.
No.
Like, and whenever I look at what the Kinect can actually see, people made YouTube videos of like, this is the Kinect's view of what you're doing. I don't understand how it could not work, because it can see individual fingers on my hand if it wants to. So how the developers screwed that up, I don't know, but it's unfortunate. And I really wish that From Software would make another Armored Core game that's like modern, right?
Well,
like V for was Armored Core 3 Verdict Day, I think, was like the crowning achievement of Armored Core. Like, there's still online league play for that thing today. Like, that's the reason that I keep a PlayStation 3 laying around, is in case I want to fire that up again.
Well, I still dream of somebody bringing back Chrome Hounds, which was from Software's other mech series or game. I guess there wasn't a series, but it was, oh God, it was so good. I mean, it had balance issues and it had online play issues because Japanese developer, big surprise, right? But had they stuck with it and actually improved it, I think it would have been one of the greatest games of all time. It was so much fun. it was squad based 5v5, and you had mechs that you customized with different parts, and you could go out and fight other teams. But it was it had kind of a map, like a strategic component where you wanted to take specific locations and fight against the other factions. And it even did this crazy thing where the premise was that a solar flare wiped out the ability for radio to work, so at long range at least. So in order for voice chat to operate with your team, you had to capture radio towers along the way. I mean, just oh god, it was so good.
I love that aspect of the game. Now on PC, people would cheat and just be talking on Discord or whatever, so it wouldn't work. But because of the limitation of the console, it was actually in the game's favor. Like, you must be using the chat in game. So if you take that radio tower, now you actually have voice chat with your team.
Yep.
So that was kind of a really cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, it
was a good time. It was one of the I think maybe the first game that I can think of that had a map system, kind of what MechWarrior Online tried to adopt, where it's like, hey, we have like a big map and you fight, small scale battles, but we take the aggregate of how many people on which side win a battle in an area, and then that area will flip ownership, based on like a couple of days worth of people fighting in it. So if the red team wins like all week long, then this like chunk of the map will flip red, and then that persists until they reset the map, because eventually one team will win.
Yes.
And it's like, that's really cool. And it's also a thing of like, you need to look at the map and be like, well, I don't like fighting in the swamp biome, but that's the one that needs to be taken right now, so I guess we're going to go do that.
Yeah, exactly. And it just I mean it seems like a concept that could be done again with.
It could be done in Elite Dangerous right now, but they didn't do it because I have to deliver leaflets for.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the rage on that is a little real, man.
Dude,
God.
They put that out 4 years ago, and I still I have to stop mid sentence because I feel the rage 5 years. I feel the rage like come up my spine. It's like my kundalini. It is. Yeah.
Well, and that's interesting. There's a Discord that Jim, that I guess we're all a part of, that there was a discussion the other day in this Discord that we were all in about Elite Dangerous and like development teams and development cycles, because people wanted to kind of like bringing it back around to CD Projekt Red and to Cyberpunk. These developers, they announced this game back in, what was it, like 2011, 2012, somewhere in there, and they haven't been fully working on it or full-time working on it up until maybe within the last 4 or 5 years, because they were still doing the Witcher stuff. And it's only been, I feel like, within the last 3 years that like they've been solely focused on nothing but Cyberpunk, from every indication that I've been reading, because they were still trying to wrap up all of the Witcher things and close out the book on Witcher. And so you have this development company with all these people making this gigantically big epic game, right? They're trying their darndest. And someone wanted to talk about how just like bad they were, and then they were comparing it to Frontier, where like Frontier has had Elite Dangerous out for like the last 5 years, and yet their content like production after that, or their like updates or their additions after that, are few and far between, and when they do, it's usually very lackluster. And I have to say, like, I've been very frustrated with Frontier's like development cycle. And then someone wanted to be like, well, how'd you feel about No Man's Sky, and how do you feel? I was like, well, perfect example of No Man's Sky was it was a smaller team of people than Frontier, and when they put out new content and content updates for No Man's Sky, it's like beefy. Like the amount of stuff that you can do in No Man's Sky completely outshines the amount of stuff that you can do in Elite Dangerous.
So in Elite Dangerous, talking about like their completely milquetoast releases that thankfully they're not like charging money for anymore, like Horizons, right, where it was like, oh yeah, I get a golf cart I can drive around on the moon, and that cost me $30 or whatever, and the stuff after that has been free. But it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be out in 6 months. Oh well, we delayed it, and so it's usually like a year and a half it takes them to put out their 6 month patch, and then whenever it comes out, it's like the last one that we got was the carriers, and the
Brother,
hype cycle
I
happens
don't.
in the community.
Oh my
The
god.
hype cycle is bullshit because it's like, oh dude, they're putting in carriers, it's going to change the whole game. No, it didn't. It didn't do anything. It's like a little quality of life thing that honestly they could have put in the game in a weekend like years ago. It's not a big deal. I don't understand what the heck took like a year and a half to put that in. That's bonkers.
Right. And yeah, so
Space
this
legs are
isn't this isn't to like completely dunk on Elite Dangerous and Frontier, because what Elite Dangerous does, well,
do a whole show where we just dunk on Frontier.
Well, for what it's worth, what there is that's there is enjoyable. Like, I mean, the flight sim stuff in there is enjoyable. The game does look beautiful. The mining is very tactile. I feel like there is an element of, you know, there is something there, but there's nothing else beyond that. So like once you've done it, there's not much else to do. And so what really bugs me is like when people talk about the content that they add, the moon buggy is great. Like I can do, I instead of flying around and exploring, I can land on that moon and explore that moon. And it looks like that other moon, and it looks like that other moon. And it looks like, so the point is like, you know, it is additional content, but it's not a lot. And so soon they're adding in the space legs thing to where it's like now you can get out of the buggy. So like it's like a progression.
No,
right?
The way it works. Did you watch the Obsidian Ant video that came out the other day? Because he's talking at length about it and showing like new footage, and it's basically like, hey, you're playing Elite, but it looks like Mass Effect, and you don't even need a spaceship anymore, because the very things that you did that required a spaceship, you can get like a walking around on your feet version of it. Like, you want to go mining? Well, you can go out and mine on foot. Do you want to do cargo delivery? Yeah, we can do that on foot.
That you have a spaceship, like that you're doing this in space?
Well, that's the point that's the point I'm trying to get at, though, is like the progression system keeps minimizing you down to like you're in this big spaceship, now you can get in this buggy, and now you can go and do it on foot, and it's just like, but what does that mean though if like I've got no sense of ownership, if I don't have any sense? So anyway, keep going.
No, the next expansion is going to be called Jars, and I'm going to be a head in a jar on a shelf.
Right.
And yet I can still play all of the game from the shelf because I don't even need feet. So, but the terrible stuff about this is like, no matter how much they add different ways to do the same old shit, it's still the same old shit. So
yeah, the loop in it, the loop is very much like outdone. And
right, and it's just busted. Like, the economy is busted. The whole motivation for playing is busted, because the only reason to play is to get money. And what do you want money for? Well, the only thing I can buy with the money is a better spaceship. So now I've got the spaceship that I want, and I tried the better one and I don't like it. So I went back, and now it's just like, okay, cool. I'm in my sweet spot ship. I've got it A-spec. I've got all the mods on it, and there's no further reason to touch this game, because there's no day-to-day like life cycle to
like
anything.
you've got no dailies, you've got no sense of purpose. Like it's one of those things. It's the EVE Online problem, right? Like when you go and play EVE Online, you go out and live in 0 space. It's kind of like you have to have somebody who's the content generator. Well, it's just like, well, what are we doing? Well, Brad over here is going to take everybody out on a roam to go find some PvP. or Johnny over there is going to take everybody out and we're going to go do like some big like PvE event or some stupid thing like that. So it's like you have to have somebody like in the game organizing the fun for you to go and have it. So it's like the problem with a sandbox is unless you have like the tools to like actually do something in the sandbox, and the sandbox kind of means nothing, and they don't really give you tools in the sandbox of Elite Dangerous. At least in Eve you have tools.
Yeah, that's the thing that they need to do, is give the players the tools to create the content for the other players. And in that way, you don't have a giant developer burden, right? You can just...
Yeah, but then you get into a discovery burden, right? Because you end up with thousands of terrible maps and things that you have to
that's true.
go through.
I mean, okay, I have a whole long rant about this, and I won't go into it here, but I kind of solved that. Like, yeah, Hunter knows, he was there, but I've got the solution for that, and it's a very capitalist system. So, but anyway, it could be done. But yes, it wouldn't be perfect. But whatever. But point being, as it is, the game sucks, and Cyberpunk coming out. It's kind of like a Star Citizen. So can we have Night City Citizen?
Because, so that was kind of my point, though.
In a couple years, this will be done.
I wanted to loop back around to that. Even as buggy as Cyberpunk is, there's still more to do, and there's still more content in it than Elite. Is again what I was trying to like loop back to with all of that. So yeah. You know, when you look at all of this other stuff, it just bugs me. But anyway, man, we've covered quite a bit. There's still some more things that we've got going on in here, and we haven't even reached an hour and a half here in our conversation. So Mellified over this week, he sent over a couple of interesting articles. If we want to keep on the game space before we get into some more hardware stuff, we've talked a little bit about hardware, but we're going to come back to that. But I guess in the game space of things, we can start with what's going on here with Fortnite. You want to take that one?
I just found this interesting. Sure. Fortnite has a limited time mode called the Spy Within, which, if you're wondering what that means, it is a game mode that is about Among Us. Excuse me. Which, you know, Among Us isn't an original concept. It's basically a gamification of a lot of tabletop in real life party games, like Werewolf.
I'm shocked though that they would actually, like, Among Us is enough of a cultural phenomenon to slip into Fortnite now. That's kind of it, because it just came out on Game Pass, right? So it's like, wow, okay, like everybody just got that for free, but it was a huge streamer thing. Although I don't know how you stream it without like huge delay, because like get stream sniped, right? It's like anybody can watch, and it's like, not only are you sus, but I'm watching your stream and I saw you kill that guy. But anyways, yeah. So what did Fortnite do? Did they actually bring the mechanic in? And it's like, so we can play Among Us without owning Among Us.
Correct.
In Fortnite.
Correct.
Okay. So I don't need Among Us anymore. We can just play Fortnite. Right.
And
can Fortnite become a collection of mini games like that? Because at some point it becomes like a Roblox, right? Where it's, but it's not community created stuff. Or let's say we allow community created stuff, but it has to go through a vetting process where, you know, they officially bless it and bring it out as like mode of the month or something. Yeah. So, you know, one lucky content creator will be chosen or whatever. But yeah, but it just amazes me that they actually put a game in a game so you can play a game while you game.
Well, and I think it
exhibits here.
It is a limited time mode, which means, you know, theoretically it goes away at some point. But I gotta think if it's super popular that it'll stay as a new mode.
I'm wondering if that's why they put a limited time on it, because they're like, let's try it and see how it goes, and if not, we don't have to keep supporting this mess.
And it is a little different than Among Us. You can't do, as far as I know, you can't do private instances of this. You are playing with 10 people. There are 2 spies always, and if you don't have 10 people, then it fills it in with randos. And since you can only have 4 people in a party in Fortnite, presumably that's how it's always going to be. But it was an interesting idea. I think.
Is it going to merge with Star Wars content? So like, it's like, who's the Imperial agent on the?
Hey, maybe. I mean, that would be a way for them to bring back.
I could be the rebel in the Death Star, like, and everybody else plays stormtroopers, and we have to guess like who's the rebel.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, this speaks more to me about Epic's ethical stance on these things. I mean, Fortnite itself, there was a big controversy because they were working with PUBG to get the Unreal Engine to do all the things that PUBG needed it to do, and perform well. And in the meantime, Epic took the Fortnite Save the World mode and went, hey, let's try this battle royale concept that PUBG came up with in this engine that we've got. And, Fortnite, as we know it, Fortnite Battle Royale technically was born. And, they got sued by PUBG, the company behind PUBG. It never went anywhere. But, it makes me feel like this harkens back to that, where they said, oh, that game's popular. Why don't we just rip that game mechanic off and throw it in Fortnite? Well,
in this case, though, they're actually like officially branding it with Among Us, right? So I would assume that there is a handshake agreement and money is going to change hands for letting them use their game concept in Fortnite, right? So the developers are actually going to get paid for this. It's not like they just stole their shit like they did with PUBG.
I don't believe that's true. There's no, as far as I know, there's no reference to Among Us in the
post really
at all. I think they just took it and did it.
See, I made the assumption that they were nice guys and they were just gonna, because you could also use the popularity of Among Us and just be like, hey, you want to play Among Us in Fortnite, right? And use the name recognition of Among Us and get all those people to come back to Fortnite who haven't played Fortnite in a while. And can you imagine playing Fortnite as the little Among Us dudes in their little spacesuits running around? But I guess none of that's a thing. So, oh well.
Yeah, unfortunately. The other kind of weird side note to this is apparently Fortnite supports a program called House Party, which basically allows you to add video chat to any game. It adds a sidebar to the game, and you can do you see
what
the rest.
Could go wrong?
Yeah. So that's kind of an interesting, additional little weird thing there. But I was a little disappointed to see Epic, just drop this in as well.
I wonder if Chatterbait's going to sue him for that one.
Yeah. Sorry.
Wow. On that note, moving on.
Oh man, I was not expecting that. Sorry, God.
Want to talk about a way out since we're desperately seeking a way out from Jim's comment there?
Yeah, we'll actually get to a way out. We've got some things to say about a way out that Mellified and I really like. But before we get there,
I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna listen to the podcast, and if you edit out what I just said, I'm coming
So within since we did our last podcast, we there was a huge drop of gaming news. So there was the Video Game Awards, and there was a lot of news that came out. And I kind of just want to briefly touch on some of the highlights that, at least that I saw. And you guys can feel free to jump in. But they announced and had a trailer for a new Perfect Dark game, which I thought was strange. I didn't realize that people were still wanting that franchise, but the first game definitely wasn't that bad. I was kind of like GoldenEye on steroids, and I think people really liked that. And Mellified and I played around with it the other day because they did an HD remaster of it on the 360, which you can still play. It actually looks shockingly good. Like, I mean, for being a remaster of a 64 game, the textures are smooth. I mean, they're not like super like high-end gaming textures like you see with like a current gen stuff, but I mean your eyes are not going to hurt looking at it, in other words. there was the announcement of them adding the Cyberpunk car into the Forza Horizon 4, which I actually unlocked the other day myself. I think Pickle, you grabbed that, didn't you?
Yes. I really wish that the rest of the cars were in here.
Yeah, same.
It's like had they even done a paid DLC where it was like $5-10, I'd have been down for it. Yeah. Because like the cars that are in Cyberpunk are really cool.
They were
fun to drive.
Before I go on all these other things, this brings up an interesting point, and I think this is actually a really interesting thing that we're running into. This isn't new, but I feel like I'm starting to see more of it happening again, where you see bits of other games in another person's game. So sometimes developers will put things in as like homages or like little cameos because they want to like honor something that they like. So like even in movies, you see this, right? Like, so you see
that's why I had the bad thought about Fortnite actually would have represented Among Us as Among Us inside of Fortnite in a limited time mode because of this crossover thing. It's like whenever something comes out on Steam and hey, we get a head crab in this unrelated game because it's on Steam, right? And the Kojima game, Death Stranding. Yeah. Not only did they get the head crab stuff, they got Half-Life Alyx,
the stalkers, the stalkers,
walker things. And then when Cyberpunk came out, you get the Cyberpunk motorcycle, you get to wear the clothes from the thing. And they're cross-pollinating Cyberpunk into Horizon, and it's like, this is cool, man. Because unfortunately, Cyberpunk's having its issues, but if it was not having the issues, this would be a glorious celebration of
that's the point I was trying to make, though. Like, is like so you see in like in movies and stuff like that, you'll see like some producer, like in the Star Trek 2009, you could see R2D2 in like the background somewhere, or in I think it was Battlestar Galactica, you could see the Firefly class ship from Firefly in one of the episodes or something like that.
Or in episode 3 when you saw E.T. in the galactic.
Right. Oh yeah. That's right. That's another good example. So it's these kind of things where you see like these little cameos and homages to things that I think is interesting to see in the games. And I think Death Stranding and Cyberpunk and Forza and these things are kind of interesting, like cross-pollinated style games that are kind of putting a little bit of their stuff in other games. I don't want to see that happen in an obnoxious sense. I do think that it's cool and kind of like a fun, like little sense like that. But I mean, we've been seeing this kind of stuff for a long time, like in Warframe, for example, because you can get Warframe on Epic now. There's like there's a skin pack that you can get through Epic to turn all the Warframe guns into Unreal Tournament weapons. So it's like little things like that I think that are kind of unique and fun and interesting. I mean, Fortnite's another example of that, where they've got like Star Wars stuff in there, Master Chief's in there now. They put Master Chief stuff in Forza, for example, so you can get like the Warthog in Forza. So just little stuff like that I think is kind of interesting and unique. And I appreciate the fact that it doesn't feel like it's getting overdone. So, a couple other games that were announced. Go ahead.
Fighting games have been doing.
Oh yeah, Mortal Kombat, especially the new Mortal Kombat's been adding like everybody. Smash Brothers is like adding all of the game characters ever into it. Yeah.
Yeah, but Smash Brothers isn't getting money on it, but Mortal Kombat, it's like, okay, yeah, we put in RoboCop
and Predator and
Predator, but the thing was, there was a Predator movie, there was a brand new Terminator movie, and they put the version of the Terminator in that is in the new Terminator movie, right? So that feels like a marketing cross thing. It's like when I go to Taco Bell and I get the Godzilla meal because Godzilla's in theaters.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's like, oh God, how old that happened in 1996 with the Godzilla movie.
I think it was later than that, but
that's still my go-to example of like cross-platform marketing. Yeah, 98.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But yes.
So some other games that were announced during the Game Awards were Back for Blood, which is kind of like a spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead. People are calling it like Left 4 Dead 3, essentially.
I was hoping it was like a Back to the Future tie-in where it was like Marty pulls up in the flying DeLorean and it's like Back for Blood.
Back for Blood. It almost sounds like a Rambo film,
5.
you know?
Yeah, it's a Back to the Future 5, and he flies through all the movie franchises, collecting all the heroes. Dude, that would be it, right? Because he could go to Rambo and get Rambo. It's kind of like what happened in the last Avengers movie, right? We just open a portal and like pull the Avengers in from alternate universes. Well, here it could be like we pull them in from other. Dude, it would be the movie equivalent of Smash Brothers, really. And what about Smash Brothers the movie? Can we get that? I'm sure they screw that up bad.
Yeah, did you guys see Sonic? Did you guys see Sonic the Hedgehog? Was that any good?
It was supposed to be way better than anybody expected. I haven't seen it.
I think our expectations were so low that anything is better than expected. Sure. Especially after they showed that initial CG and people were like,
Jesus.
What?
Yeah.
Now talk about a movie doing the No Man's Sky. That's an example of that, where they actually went back and like just recooked all the CG in the movie because they realized like, yeah,
that was terrible. I even freaked out and was like, there's something wrong here. But anyway, so a couple of the games that were announced, Crimson Desert, which looks very interesting. It's from Pearl Abyss.
It's the Black Desert sequel.
Yeah, I'm really interested in it. Have
you ever played Black Desert? It's like $5 on Steam, right?
Yeah, so
It's a super grind Korean MMO, so I don't know if this is going to be much different. The one thing
apparently, though, this is an open world action adventure game, so I don't know if this is going to be an MMO. I think it might actually be just a standard game, but we'll see.
Oh, that would be cool because I like the world. I just hate the game. So
no, I gotcha. Yeah, that's fair. And then there was a few surprises that kind of shocked me. We're getting an Ark 2 game, which apparently Vin Diesel has a 3D rendering of himself in the trailer, but apparently he's actually helping with like more than just that. I guess he's like really involved with the project somehow, which doesn't surprise me because he's a
producer way with this thing. Because you remember Vin Diesel owns a
D&D
Tygon.
Yeah. But he's also super into D&D and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, but it's good though, because I feel like it's, he needs to branch out more than just doing Fast and Furious and Riddick movies. So
yeah, can you imagine they do Dungeons and Dragons 3 or whatever number they're on, starring Vin Diesel? It's
my gosh,
it's the glory, right? Like Vin Diesel finally gets to be in a D&D movie as his character from the tabletop game.
Yeah. Well, and then a couple other games that we're getting, Dragon Age 4, which for me is kind of a take it or leave it. I didn't get super into the Dragon Age games.
I like the first one, and that was it.
I think that's the only one I've ever actually played any amount of. I've never completed any of them, but
what changed super radically? It was like not the same kind of game at all. Yeah.
And
the first to the second, and then the third one was like, what the hell is this?
Right. And we're getting a Mass Effect game, another Mass Effect game, but apparently this one's going to be a sequel to the original trilogy. So, or at least that's the rumor. I mean, the announcement trailer they showed, huh?
Plus a remaster of the original trilogy.
Right, they are doing a remaster of the original trilogy, which I think the original trilogy kind of deserves that, because it was, despite how 3 ended, I think the rest of it, I think the journey more than the destination was well worth the time put into it. So,
and hopefully they take the opportunity to shore the first Mass Effect up to the level of
please, yes, that'd be great. Because if you do try to go back and play the gameplay of Mass Effect 1 is a little harder to navigate your brain around compared to 2 and 3. 2, I still think, is one of the best sci-fi RPGs ever made. It's really good.
Yeah, like I go back and replay the entire thing about once a year, and I very rarely actually finish a game, like new games. You know, I'll get partway in, and then like the new thing comes out, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm playing this now. But I will actually replay through the entire content of Mass Effect 2 probably on a once a year basis for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I've never finished 3. Let's put it that way.
There's so those are the things that stood out to me. Did you guys see anything from the Game Awards that stood out to you, gameplay wise, or announcement wise, or award wise, or anything like that? All right.
Well, I don't know. There was a lot of cool trailer stuff. The Game Awards, it's kind of like it's the opposite of television because I want to skip the content and watch the commercials. It's kind of like watching the Super Bowl, right? When I don't like sports. So
well,
I'm just
it's interesting.
Commercials.
It's interesting you say that because that same weekend that the Game Awards happened, not only were all these game announcements and trailers dropped, but then there was like all of these movies and TV show announcements that also dropped like all on the same night. Like a whole bunch of stuff from Disney with like Marvel like shows and movies, Star Wars shows and movies, just all kinds of like content.
Yeah, and I'm honestly surprised that they did not advertise that stuff in the Game Awards. That would have been the platform for doing it, right? But it didn't happen because you told me, you know, you were like blowing up my DMs that night with like, oh my god, this got announced. Oh, holy crap, this got announced. And it was just like the stream of stuff that went for like hours of discovering all the things that
it was a lot.
Yeah, it was just like, what happened? You know, like usually this only happens at like E3 time or something, but we didn't have that this year. So maybe that was it. You know, it's like the back pressure of all this hype that couldn't get released. And it's like what went down. And then I found out, oh yeah, the Game Awards were that night. So I expected whenever I went back and watched the Game Awards that all that shit was going to get mentioned, and it didn't. So at that point, it's still kind of a mystery. Like, wow, okay, so we had simultaneous release of a whole lot of news, and only a small fraction of that was actually announced at the awards. So strange.
Yep.
It seems like failure to use the vehicle, right? It's like we have this PR vehicle happening, and they just didn't get on the bus with it. It's weird. And yet it all came out the same day. Huh.
Yeah. Well, something to add to all that. You know, as a gaming community that we're growing and building over here, we love all things gaming, of course. And
well, there's a couple of things I hate.
Sure. I mean, we like as a unit per se, there are things within that unit that we aren't so fond of, but like as a whole, on the whole, I think we can say that we like, you know, gaming, board gaming, tabletop gaming, video gaming, you know, gaming.
Except for that one game.
Except for that one. Yeah. That one, yeah. But I think one of the things, you know, we've talked about before, we love games preservation, but we also love like gaming interaction, and co-op gaming I think is such a great importance, especially now more than ever. I think co-op gaming is really important because it continues to, you know, provide for some social interaction, especially when you have people who might not be able to get with family or close to friends. You know, Jim and I have been playing games together for years. Mellified and I have been really enjoying playing games, and recently Mellified and I played through a game called A Way Out, which is currently on Game Pass because of the EA Play, on Xbox console, not on PC right now. But its co-op is a very interesting experience, to say the least. So the overall premise of this game, of A Way Out, is, if you guys haven't seen or heard about it, is, you know, you're a couple of guys who meet each other in prison, and you decide to try and help each other escape from this prison to go cash in on a vendetta against the same guy who, through two different means, put you in prison. That's kind of like
a love story.
Sure, it's a love-hate story, right? You know,
two guys, they meet in prison, they find out that they're really synergized.
Yeah, it's a love story. So the interesting thing is as Mellified and I were playing this, and feel free to jump in at any point, Mellified, on this, but as we were playing this, we we were trying to figure out, like, well, when does this take place and when does this happen? Because there's like little clues in here and there. You know, we're looking at the scenery and the clothes and like the technology of the era, and we're like, well, maybe this is like the 60s, or maybe this is, and so come to find, because, you know, maybe it's the 70s because they dropped Vietnam stuff and blah blah blah, and it turns out it's the early 70s that this game takes place in, and so it's really kind of fun. One of the things that I instantly enjoyed about this game is that as we're playing co-op, so he's down where he lives, you know, which is several states away from where I live, and it still does split screen on the screen, so like I can see what he's doing on his side of things, and I can see, you know, and he can see what I'm doing on my side of things. What's interesting, though, is when his character at the beginning of the game was going through and doing certain stuff. So the way it starts out is one of the characters is already in prison and another character is being brought to the prison for the first time. And so Mellified was playing the character that was being brought to the prison for the first time. So like I'm already there, but like I can like walk up to the fence and like I can see the bus pulling up, and it's going through a cutscene on his side of him sitting on the bus, and I'm actually watching the, like, in real time, the bus pulling up, him getting off, him walking in, and it just the way that the game narrates from these two different perspectives at the same time was very fluid and flawless, and I really appreciated how it did all of that.
In the beginning, it was flawless. We did see one or two, you know, network hiccups, seemingly that warped, you know, well, one of them around.
There was the phone booth thing later on that was a little weird. So like you were in the phone booth and I was standing behind it, and on your screen, like I wasn't even there. But yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a neat way to bring things together. I am so very aware of what you're doing and vice versa, which helped a lot of the puzzle elements of the game, because there were timing things that we had to do. You know, I had to distract a guard in the infirmary to help you get out. And so knowing where you were on the screen was really helpful, as an example. But I thought the way they told the story was really good. I thought the way that it incorporated, you and I are commenting at the time, like it incorporated a bunch of different play styles. We went into effectively like a beat 'em up mode for a little while there. We were doing car racing, we were doing target shooting, all within, you know, a way out the game.
At one point there's a hallway scene and it turns straight up into like a side-scrolling beat 'em up. Like it was pretty, I was like, what the hell just happened? It was just weird. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that it's very interesting to do, like, you have the perspective of the other character, even though you're not really sharing the same screen. They kept the same experience, right? And I'm sure that there's places in that game that it's integral to the gameplay that you know what the other person's situation is, even though you don't see it on your screen.
Definitely.
Right?
Yes.
So that's cool. That makes me think of like a lot of other co-op games where it would be really beneficial to have the ability to like picture in picture get the view from the other person, right? Like even if we're playing like an MMO, right? And it's like, where are you at? I don't know, I'm lost, whatever. And then I could pull up your point of view like in a quarter of the screen, right? And just be like, oh, I see what you're doing, right? Let me help you out. That would be pretty darn interesting.
And what's notable to me about this is it does have local split screen. So you can play, it's always 2 players, but you can play with your friend on the couch, you can play with your friend online, and obviously it would be the same experience either way. Unlike a lot of co-op games where once you go online, you get the screen to yourself, which changes the dynamic.
Well, and there's a lot of games that are on Steam that have co-op multiplayer, but it's local co-op only. And I feel like, well, they didn't want to tackle the whole network problem and whatever, right? So now Steam has that deal where it's like, oh, but we can stream the game and then push your controller input to the other person or whatever. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But what if that was just baked into the game where, you know, I get the same screen on both ends and my controller inputs read, you know, so it would be like both sides of the game stream to each other, but it doesn't have to stream the screen. It just streams the data and then it reconstructs it, you know, like you just tell me what's happening, but don't actually send the, you know, the image over.
Image.
Yeah, so that would take care of bandwidth problems and whatnot. But yeah, I like those like couch co-op experiences, but unfortunately, I don't have a couch, and it's COVID.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing for me that worked better than expected with it was the characters were engaging, right? Like this is a story about 2 guys and their journey. And I don't think it would have maybe worked as well had the story not been good. You know, the gameplay wasn't anything we haven't seen before other places, I guess.
Yeah.
But they definitely kept it interesting.
But the story took advantage of the split screen stuff too, right? So, I mean, it sounds like the being stylized like that, very cool, right? Like I could deal with like, hey, let's have a comic book game where it's 4-player co-op, but each character's actually in a different comic book panel on the same page that is my screen or something. Like you could do stuff, right? But,
well, the other interesting thing that I liked about the game too was they kind of made you feel like you were part of the story that you were playing. In other words, there's a trailer park sequence where we're both going through the trailer park trying to find something, and there's, you know, people that live in this trailer park, and so you can actually go and interact with the people that are living there. Like Mellified went and helped some lady find her husband who was in another trailer cheating on her. And I went and played baseball with a couple of the guys down the road, and like there's just like, you know, and you can actually score against each other. So like I could try and go for a high score, and then like the other person with their character could come over and try and see what they could get as a high score. And you can actually, there's like all these like little mini games. There was like a mini games version of darts in there at one point too, I think. There's just like a lot of little details. So it wasn't just like straightforward, cut and dry.
Yeah. Does it ever have a sequence where the 2 of you are handcuffed to each other and you have to escape?
No.
Yes, but not handcuffed. But yes, there is a sequence where we're pretty much tied together, and we're using that to our advantage to escape. And I'm thinking of, you know what I'm talking about, Mellified?
So yeah, I think I remember that now.
The elevator shaft or whatever that was. Yeah.
Because there was a series of buddy cop movies, like every 10 years you get one, right? Like I remember a Ruger Hauer movie called Wedlock, where it was 2 people that had explosive collars and they had to stay within like 5 feet of each other or they'd both die. Kind of.
Yeah, there is a sequence where like you have to use it. So this isn't really spoilery, but like you have to do this thing where you're like back to back, and you have to like put your feet against the wall, and you're essentially scaling like a almost like an elevator shaft like sequence. And so you have to time it where like I'm going up and then he's going up, but if you go up too fast, then we both would fall and die. And
oh, cool.
There's a lot of little things like that.
If you want to play a platformer game that has really strong 2-player co-op, check out Chariot, because that's exactly what Chariot is.
Yep, that's a fun one for sure.
Yeah, it's 2 people struggling to get a cart through a mine.
Yeah,
Well, I also think of two of like Army of Two that was on the Xbox 360. That was a pretty solid co-op like game where it took two of you to do a lot of things.
Did either of you guys ever play the Kane and Lynch games? Because they made two of them, and that's also like a
I played the first.
buddy.
I think I played the first one.
I played the first one. I know the second one was notorious for blowing up the paid game review. Secret in the industry, but that was I never played the game.
I don't think that that term has been coined yet, but I'm calling it Gerstmann Gate.
There's been experiments to do this. I think A Way Out was one of the more refined experiences for this kind of co-op. It's funny because it had split screen, but it also was dynamic. So in certain scenes, it was, you were on a shared screen. So they were smart about how they did it. If you've played any of the recent Lego games, which are couch co-op only, those do a dynamic split screen where as your characters go different directions, it'll kind of bring in a split screen. And I find that so disorienting. I always have to turn it off. So I it's surprising to me, I guess, that we've had the idea of couch co-op for many, 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 many years. Going back to the Nintendo, but it's still, a space that there's room for innovation in.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the nice thing about, some people can't do the Lego co-op stuff because of the way they handle those things, but the nice thing about that, though, is if you have Steam, you can do the remote play together feature. And
and it was specifically the Lego games that inspired me to bitch about that.
So, and I actually like the remote play together feature. I'm glad that Steam added that, to be honest with you. Nvidia was toying with that for a little while, and Jim and I actually tried that out at one point, and that actually works shockingly well. Which I don't think they're supporting that feature anymore because of the they're doing other cloud stuff right now. But yeah, I do think that's a really solid feature to have, and I'm actually really glad that Steam integrated that in. Because there's third-party apps, right? Like there's what am I thinking of? Like it starts with a P. It's like Parallel or Periscope or something. I don't know. It's whatever, but. Anyway, it's good to know that the people are trying to make innovations with local co-op games to be able to play across the internet together with people. It's kind of like that Xbox app that I mentioned earlier, the X-Link Kaya. So good.
What's this Battlefield 2142 link that you dropped in the chat?
Oh, yeah, so when Mellified mentioned earlier, I'm glad you pointed that out. So Mellified mentioned earlier that there was that website, the delistedgames.com, and I decided to go check it out, and I looked at their games list, and at the top in the B's was the Battlefield 2 and Battlefield 2142. You cannot buy those games anywhere anymore. If you had them through your Origin account, you can still download them, but you can no longer purchase them or add them to your account, from what I understand. And so when I was looking at the Battlefield 2142, they had this section, they had a link to this website called battlefield2142.co. And there's a whole community of people, Reclamation, I guess is what it's called. And there's a lot of tools and stuff down here to let you keep playing. And as I was looking at it, I clicked on their servers tab, and they have two servers. One of them has a population of 22 out of 64 currently playing, and the other one has 7 out of 64 currently playing. So they still have people playing on these servers, but I don't know how many people are familiar or are aware that these projects exist. And I think the Revive thing that got shut down, remember that? So GameSpy went out, and then Revive was the thing that you and I were using for a little while there, Jim. And then they got a cease and desist from.
I feel my sodium level rising.
Yeah, well, I mean, they got a cease and desist from EA because they were using EA's logos and branding on some of their stuff, and EA was like, "Hey, stop that and stop distributing the game, but you can keep, using the service." And they got so salty that they shut the whole thing down. They were like, they killed the whole project.
We're going to punish the community in our rage,
right? And so
very short-sighted,
very short-sighted.
Legally required to protect their trademarks, or they lose them.
Right.
Yeah. So it seemed like a lash out tantrum where the developers of the project punished the community because they couldn't light fire to EA's building. So it was like they're going to burn their own house down to spite everybody.
So Reclamation here has a bunch of tools. They've got you have to legally own the game, so you have to provide the game for yourself. But then once you install the game, they have a couple of things that you can install. So then you have to install the 1.51 patch. Then you install the Reclamation map pack, and then you install the Battlefield 2142 hub, which is their thing. And then that allows you to get around the GameSpy thing. So so you don't have to deal with games since GameSpy doesn't exist anymore. It allows you to play the game by getting around that. And they they don't have direct server support in their website, but they tell you how you can run your own server if you wanted to, which is something that I've been wanting to do. So
at what point does a game like Battlefield 2142 become public domain? Because like movies, right? It's like, oh, if it's a movie from before 1970, it's automatically public domain, right? And you can do what you want with it without copyright problems. So if the game isn't distributed anymore, there's nowhere to buy it, and it's been 20 years, should it at that point be a free for all? Because it's like,
the unfortunate nature here, though, Jim, and I hate to cut you off, but the unfortunate nature here, though, is EA stopped official support for 2142 in 2014. So
right, but that's my point. Actually, is at some point the thing should become a public domain thing because they're never gonna profit from it again. They're never gonna touch it again, but because it's EA, you would think well, we could do what we want, right? Because it's not worth their time to come bring the lawyer squad and screw us. But with EA, they will. So, but I feel like other games that are dead and gone, you kind of have more liberty from, because it's like they don't have their vultures watching.
Well, I think it's maybe a little more complicated than that, right? On one hand, EA, like I was saying, is legally obligated to protect their trademark, otherwise they lose it. And so, if somebody else was using their trademark, they were required to send that cease and desist effectively, and they even were nice enough to say keep doing what you're doing, just don't use our name and don't pirate the game.
Well, but okay, so it's the distribution of the game part specifically, though, is at what point can I legally just abandonware that thing, put the ISO up, and be like, hey, come play on our retro server. Here's the ISO, because it's just like Star Wars Galaxies, right? That game has been dead since I don't even know what year, 2005, something like that.
No, that game's been dead since 2011. Come to find out, Jim. So yeah.
Oh, okay. It was dead to me though. A lot.
Sure.
So,
sure.
But the thing is though, that ain't coming back, right? They'll never sell another Star Wars Galaxies DVD to anybody. Okay, so if I put them, I'm running the Legends server, let's say. Why can't I just distribute the game? Because I have to say, okay, well, you got to bring your own copy, nudge, wink, BitTorrent, but I can't just bake that into my client installer thing. And I don't feel that that's a giant challenge to the company that produced it, because right? It's not like they're going to start selling it again or anything. I'm not taking money out of their hands. But I guess, like you said, they have an obligation that they must defend their thing. So,
oh, okay. Mellified put it up here before I forget. So the co-op application you can use is parsekgaming.com. .com. That I have used that. It's not a bad piece of technology. I personally feel like Parsec is a little clunky. Maybe that's just me. But it is very functional and it does what it does. And I guess it looks like
maybe there's a topic of an entire episode that is here's like all the utility things, like
maybe we'll do a show about that.
Yeah, we could tell the story of our saga to try to find a VPN solution that doesn't suck, and then the one that went away for no reason.
Yeah, we can definitely. I think that'd be a great opportunity. So look out for that, folks, in a future show. But I think we're at a place now where we can just say like, hey, final thoughts. So, Jim, what have you been playing lately?
I'm playing State of Decay 2 right now, and I've been playing Cyberpunk, and played a little bit of whatever that monster hunting thing that starts with a D was last night with you
Dauntless.
guys. Dauntless, yeah.
Dauntless, I just need more time with. I was trying. First of all, we were playing last night. I was super tired from a long week of work. But two, it's just like I still don't know what I'm doing in that game. So it's just kind of like I felt like I was, holding everybody up, trying to figure it out.
And me is like a Monster Hunter World player, then coming to Dauntless, because Dauntless was like the game where it's like, hey, Monster Hunter World isn't out yet. It's going to be a couple months, but you play Dauntless today, right? And I think that's their timing was great because that's where they got their population, initially. And then whenever Monster Hunter came out, it's like Dauntless is like the, I don't know. It feels like a super simplified, super streamlined. Like we don't have like a big open world that you have to explore and learn the map and figure out where like this type of berry grows or whatever. And there's no interaction between the monsters, and there's no like little monsters that you have to deal with as nuisances or whatever. All the things that are in Monster Hunter, right? And like the complicated move sets for the weapons, where it's like learning a Street Fighter character. Literally, if I change from a sword to an axe, I have to learn a whole new move set. It's like, it's like changing Street Fighter characters because all your button combos change. And then I play Dauntless, where it's like, okay, well, left click for my light attack, right click for my strong attack, space to dodge, Q to trigger my special. That's it.
And then it's like a combination of like left, right, left, right. So it's
but it's just like the level of streamlining compared to what's going on in Capcom's game is huge, right? So it at first it's kind of like, well, what does this game have going on? Like, why am I playing this? I could be playing that I'm already quite proficient in. But it seems like I'm learning a lesser thing. But then once the monsters started getting a little harder last night, I was like, okay, well, I have timing things to think about here as well. It's like the monsters weren't all a pushover. So it was like, right. Okay, well, there's a little bit of a challenge going on here. So it's kind of like, okay, I see like Dauntless might have a place.
Yeah, early on, it was just like, yeah, I feel like I can take on all these monsters by myself. Why are you guys here? And then, as we started playing more, I was like, oh boy, help.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the Monster Hunter, but super streamlined, and it uses a freemium model instead of being $100 game. Because Monster Hunter, you got to get the game and the expansion at this point. So yeah.
And then of course you've also been
my heart for both.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go back to Dauntless. There's fun there. And but you've also been playing a little bit of Ark too, right?
Yeah, been playing some Ark. Now you set that server up and you're all like hot to play Ark, and then you've logged in like twice. So
Oh, don't give me that. No.
Meanwhile,
don't give me that.
my wife has built an entire like suburbia in there. She has a metropolis. It's become a city management simulation.
Dude, I've been logging in, man. I'm just not logging in as often as you guys are, because you guys are like, for one, you work from home, so you play like all day long all these games. And then two, like your wife gets on and plays till like 5 a.m, and like,
yeah, that's the real thing. I've been working the last 2 weeks. It's just like I haven't had any time to screw around. Like
last time I looked at server settings, you had the most logged time in the game, just FYI.
Oh yeah, because I was there like all weekend, didn't log out, and yeah.
But I've been getting in. Like I got in today. I was in there for a few hours this morning before we recorded, and I've been building out the base a little bit more. I actually extended the wall around our area because there was a section of it that needed to be put in. So like I've been in there too, man. So don't you give me that.
Yeah, no, I was just giving you shit.
But your wife. So Joan has definitely been going in there, and she's been building, like she's been taming all of the animals. Because like I every time I log in, I'm like, where did this come from? It's just like now there's that other thing that's like it's another long neck dinosaur, but it's like a pack animal. So like you can like super load it up with stuff. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, Mellified, what have you been playing?
I finished Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which there's various shades of finished for these massive open world games. I basically finished all of the story missions. I finished the Order, which are the secret society you're up against. I killed all of them. Finished all of those missions.
Did you finish the quest that made you ride all the way across the map because they turned off fast travel?
Oh, yes. And what's so frustrating about that is I found references to it from launch, and we're now 3 or 4 pretty big patches in. They've already been changing game systems, yet somehow fixing the last quest of the game so you don't have to ride halfway across goddamn England to get your fast travel back. Escaped their notice. I do not understand.
I thought that was on purpose because they needed to pad the game out to get 80 hours out of it. So.
Well, I finished at 96 hours and I was not quite max level. I was like power level 390 and the max is 400 or something like that. So I probably could have gone and done some more of the side quest content. I probably could have gone and grabbed a few more useless treasures or armor pieces that I don't really care about. But it was, I felt like I got my money's worth, to be fair. I quite enjoyed it.
So was it kind of like a AC Odyssey where, and the one before that too, but Odyssey, it's like, Origins, which I heard Origins is actually going to be free on Epic this week at some point. So keep an eye out on that. But is it like that where it's like the enemies level up per region? So if you ride too far down the road, then the same guy that you passed on the road 5 minutes ago is now like 5 levels above you and instant death, even though he looks the same.
Yes. And it does now show you on the map the level of the region. So you have some idea. But that is very much the case. They also just in this most recent patch changed it so that if you are in a region that is well below your level, they actually beefed up the bad guys, because what was happening is people were going and doing mid-game content, late and just walking through and slaughtering everybody. I will say I'm not sure I would have finished the game had I played with this most recent patch. There was a skill that you had. They love to lock doors, and you had to get inside to like bust through this thing to unlock the door. And there was a bug where one of the skills would go through the door from the wrong side and let you break these doors and short circuit a bunch of the puzzles. Because that was supposed to be like the exit door. And of course, if you could go in the exit, you finished pretty quick. So I'm not sure I would have finished the game had I not been able to exploit that bug. So there were a couple puzzles that I just couldn't be bothered with. But like I said, I quite enjoyed it. I feel like I got my money's worth. I got, I will come back for the DLC whenever they do that. And I was, I finished after finishing like a massive open world game like that. I usually find I need to take a break and do some other genre. And so I was kind of thinking like, well, what do I want to play? And really struggling. You guys were doing Ark, and I just can't get into those games. Ark and Conan Exiles just don't interest me much. So I decided I would do State of Decay 2 because it has an Xbox Series X patch that it got that brings it up to 4K 60 on the Xbox. And I had dabbled with it before at launch, but never really got very far. So I just kind of started a new community, and my gosh, I really enjoy that game. It's still got that survival element, but it's got a little more structure. There's quests that you're going on to help other survivors. You've got the plague hearts to deal with. You've got sort of that, paint the map aspect where you want to conquer all of the territory around you. And so I've just really been enjoying it. I'm still not super far into it. But if that's one that's been on your kind of to-do list and you haven't gone back to it, a lot of the jank that I remember from the game early on has been fixed, which I was really happy about. So Jim, you mentioned you played it a little bit. Was that a slip of the tongue, or have you actually gotten back to it?
I was playing it as I said that, as like I was in the game.
Okay.
But there was like a horde of zombies that came, and I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't be trying to play this and talk at the same time, because it got a little bit busy.
Got it.
A little spicy there in the suburbs.
Well, it has 4-player co-op, so I really think it would be fun to try that together at some point.
Yeah, anytime. Just let me know when.
Okay. Maybe after this.
Yeah.
How are you liking it? Is it holding up for you?
I'm at that stage where it's open world-itis to me, and I get this really bad in Ubi games like Watch Dogs Legion, right? Where it's just like, I have a list of quests, but they're not really prioritized, so I could ignore them all. And then there's this open world, and there's a whole bunch of question marks all over the map, and it's more interesting to me to go. It's like mowing the grass, right? It's like I have to uncover the map and like knock down all those question mark things. And Cyberpunk actually punishes me for that, because you get a cell phone call from the NPC every time you get in range of one of those quests, and there's like 1,000 of them. So if I'm walking through town, my phone is constantly blowing up with the same NPC calling me like, hey V, we got a job. It's right. It's like, shut up. I just want to turn my phone off, right? But I've got kind of the same thing going in that, because you find the explore spot, and then you get up on whatever tower or whatever, and you can get your binoculars out and identify like, oh, here's all the question marks that are around me. I need to go take a look at these things, and the loot thing. So what I'm doing is I'm just playing a loot game right now, where I'm not progressing the story. It's just like, oh, I discovered a house. It's full of loot, and I need to make like 4 trips back here with a van so I can hold all this trash. And I'm just looting the whole map at this point. So, but I'm going to burn out on that if I don't start digging into story at some point. I know there's got to be story there. I just haven't actually engaged it. I'm Skyrimming it. That should be that's the verb, is I'm Skyrimming. I'm ignoring the best and just, yeah.
Nice.
So last but not least, I have been hearing from a couple people who generally I agree with their gaming opinions, that Immortals: Rise of the Phoenix, which is another recent Ubisoft open world game that got released. Why on earth Ubisoft released 3 of them within 2 months of each other, I will never understand, because they did Watch Dogs Legions, Valhalla, and then Immortals all
Yeah, I think it was like a 2-week gap in between. It was just like boom, boom, coming into it was like October, November, just dropped them.
Yeah,
and it was like
yeah.
wow, okay, it's 3 games that are mechanically very similar, and the setting is different, but it's an open world map grind thing, and I feel like the audience for all 3 games is the same people, so they bought one, they're very busy with it. Why are they going to buy the other one? So, strange.
Yeah, like I said, I do not understand why they did it that way, but I kept hearing about how good Immortals was, and I was like, all right, well, I just want to try it. I just want to kind of poke at it and see if it's something I'd really like to go in and play. And holy smokes, did this game get its hooks in me. Valhalla is, as you say, they're both open world games. There's definitely some mechanics that are shared, climbing up tall things to look around, that kind of thing. But there is a framing device that they're using to tell the story in Immortals that is basically Zeus going to talk to Poseidon. And it's all Greek mythology, so you'll hear a lot of stuff you may vaguely remember from high school.
Yeah, but it's like the MTV version of Greek mythology.
Yes. It's very, they took it as inspiration rather than necessarily being true to the original stories or anything.
They should do a game, Greek Gods, the reality show, where it's like Big Brother. They just like take Zeus aside and he talks smack about Hera. Yeah, go ahead. Well,
and so I get into this game.
I'm voting off Zeus from Mount Olympus. Well,
so I get into this game, and this framing device kicks in, and they're both snarky and sort of irreverent, and the voice actors were clearly having a ball narrating Zeus and Poseidon. And as you're running around, Poseidon will say, and that's when everything went wrong, and then monsters will attack you or something like that. And so like it's tied into the moment to moment gameplay a little more than you would sort of expect it to be for just being the story. But it makes it so much fun to just run around this world and like kill stuff and loot stuff. And there's the map is painted with little icons, whatever, but like it's actually fun to be in the world, where Valhalla felt like it was kind of dark and moody and grumpy, and I enjoy that, but it's just such a night and day contrast between the two. I'm really enjoying Immortals as sort of this lighthearted game experience where I wasn't expecting to want to play another open world game so quickly.
So does it actually dungeon master it, where it's like the narrator has the power to just summon encounters, or is it more like the narrator's reacting to what was gonna happen?
Because the latter, I think. I haven't seen any examples where they've literally just summoned stuff. It's more like, oh, you just walked over the top of this hill. Look, there's 5 monsters waiting to attack you.
Okay, because one of the greatest things in gaming, I forget what the game was. It was a Western, and the guy that's narrating it is like the old guy at the saloon telling the story about when he like had the gunfight with Jesse James, and he's telling the story, and as he's telling the story, stuff happens on the screen. But there's one place where it's like, yeah, and then I come around the corner and there was like 10 engines, and you're like killing them, right? And then he's like, oh wait, no, I misremembered. It was 50 cavalry guys, and they change on the screen, right? And it's like, oh no. And yeah, I just thought that was brilliant, right? Like the narrator, because you're playing through his memory, and then he's like, oh wait, no, let me change the story mid-story. It's this, and like you get violently shifted into a new reality, and it was like, that's really cool.
Did you ever play any game?
Have you ever seen the show Doom Squad, Doom Patrol rather? It's a DC thing that's on, I forget, it's BitTorrent. That's where I watched it. But there is a character that's in there, and he's what's his name from Serenity, the guy that died, Wash, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's Wash from Serenity plays the bad guy in the show, and he narrates the show. And he does that. Like, he specifically will do things in the narration to screw with people, right? And
Alan Tudyk. Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk. And because it'll be like, but then the hero noticed that he couldn't do the thing because his leg fell off, and then so they have like this ongoing relationship with the narrator that they seem to be aware of for some reason. It's a Deadpool ass kind of thing, but that and that Western game's the only two places I've seen it, and I love it, so more people should do it. But
the one other one that came to my mind was the original the first remake or game that Ubisoft did with Prince of Persia, the Sands of Time, because you have a time rewind mechanic in that. And so if you would like fall off a ledge while platforming and then rewind, the narrator, the prince, would be like, oh no, that's not what happened. And then you rewind, and then you go back and you make the jump. And so it was very much that same style of thing, and always kind of fun. They're actually they have a remake for that coming out now in, I think, first quarter or maybe April of 2021. So that might be a good one to check out if you like that, the sound of that mechanic.
There's been a lot of HD remasterness going on.
Speaking of, I was looking at all the Game Pass stuff, and they recently just put on all of the like Kingdom Hearts remastered, including Kingdom Hearts 3 is on there. So I was like, wow, that's pretty cool to see all that on there. There's if we haven't said it. Well, yeah, but of course, like I said, I've got my Xbox here, like right next to my PC. But speaking of that, though, I do want to make a mention and start wrapping things up. Is that there are tons of game sales going on right now for the holidays. So I know this podcast is probably going to go out on Monday, just before Christmas. So hopefully, or at least by Monday, just before Christmas. So you guys should be able to hear this and know that there's tons of game sales going on GOG.com. On Steam. Epic's got like a game a day that they're giving away for free on top of their sales. Ubisoft just did a whole bunch of like free stuff. If you haven't, keep going and checking that. I think they're going to continue to do more stuff later. But they
so that link you sent me is like the catch-up link, right? Like, oh, did you miss some game? Don't worry.
Yeah, so if you didn't get Starlink, Jim, I'd go ahead and click on that so you can get Starlink.
Yeah, I did.
But
I don't know
so there's
the other games
there's some stuff is just like add-ons to games if you have the other game. But anyway, it's really good. I mean, the holidays are always a good time of year to keep your eye on stuff. Microsoft's no different. Xbox has got a whole bunch of stuff on sale. But I did want to make a mention, and we talked about it in I think our first show, and I wanted to bring it up now that they are not bringing EA Play PC to Game Pass until next year. So the EA Play for PC on Game Pass is not coming out until next year. So that's a little unfortunate.
The reason, I guess, the theory that I heard that makes a lot of sense is EA's been slowly transitioning off of the Origin brand to a new launcher that would be EA branded, and that rollout was supposed to be done in October, and it stalled for whatever reason. I think maybe they found some technical issues, whatnot.
Yeah, I've got the beta of their EA launcher that's supposed to replace Origin. It's still clunky.
So is it like nobody likes Origin? Let's change the name.
No, it's a new launcher. I mean, it is a new application. I don't know. It sounds like it's not necessarily better, but.
Well, I think they got to a point where their Origin launcher was just fine, but I think it's like GOG. Like, GOG, went from their launcher to like Galaxy 2.0, and they completely changed everything. I think that's just what EA is trying to do. So I mean, think about it like this: like EA went through a reversion, right? So like they went back and they're starting to sell a whole bunch of stuff on Steam again. I mean, they're selling a whole bunch of stuff like in other locations. They, they're being super friendly with Microsoft and allowing the base version of EA Play on Game Pass, which again is just ridiculous. Which is how Mellified and I were able to play A Way Out, is because of that. Because I didn't own the game, so I was able to get it that way and play it. So it's just EA is going through a little bit of a rebrand probably, and I think they need to. I think they've taken way too much flack for right, and almost rightfully so, for the way that they've handled some of their game launches as of the last few years. I'm specifically looking at how they've handled some of the Star Wars games, for example. That's not to say that Battlefront and Battlefront 2, the new versions, weren't fun. They definitely were pretty and fun to play, but they left a lot to be desired, considering it's the game mechanics thing, right? Elite Dangerous all over again, No Man's Sky all over again, like content, right? You can make a game that looks pretty, but if there's nothing to do, then what's the point? So it's like I use Empyrean as an example. Like, this guy has been making Empyrean for the last few years. He finally went 1.0 this year, and it's got way more content in it than Elite Dangerous does, made by an entire development team over the last 5 years of launch. So it's like, I know it's kind of a little apples to oranges in some respect, but there's also a lot of apples to apples there too, and it's kind of hard to justify. But so yeah, keep your eyes out, guys. If you're wanting to get new consoles and new hardware, keep your eyes out for sales and stuff like that. You're probably going to see a lot of backlogs and stuff like that for the new consoles until well into 2021. I decided to go ahead and say screw it, and I just went ahead and bought a new Oculus Quest 2 instead. So, because I was able to get one of those in like January. So anyway, any other final thoughts, gentlemen?
A lot of us have time off work, time off school, time at home. It's a great time to join our community at gilded.otherworlds.gg, and we do a community play every Friday night at this point, which it varies every week what we play, but we'd love to have you. Please come join us.
And with that has been episode number 3. See you guys next time.
Yeehaw.